Who am I? My name, as he said, is Alberto. I'm also known as Bubu in the CTF community. I'm mostly interested in web security and web privacy, as well as browser stuff. I'm a CTF player for a couple of teams. One is the Hackers Crew that is competing in the other room in the finals of the DefCamp. I'm also part of, as invited expert of the W3C Security Interest Group. So in this talk, I will be talking about browser permissions, a bit of disclaimer, the Android web view works completely different. And most probably that you will use this kind of application daily, like for example, geolocation using Google Maps for, let's say that you are going to go to a bar and you need to know how much time do you need to go to that bar from your apartment. Another example might be like Meet, video conference websites in which you share your camera, your microphone, also maybe the screen. And there are other examples like USB or clipboard. So there are around 80 permissions. The list of permissions keeps increasing. Recently, for example, Chromium added a couple of them related to AI. And right now, there is no up-to-date list. Some of them, as I mentioned before, is camera, display capture, microphone, but there are others, like sensors. This is a website that we developed for an academic paper that is like the most completely list that is right now with the permissions that are supported in different browsers. And also, so I monthly update this list. So maybe a permission wasn't supported in the last version, but will be supported on the next one. I will also talk about this website that is open source on the next slides. So permissions, browser permissions have two main characteristics. The first one is if it's powerful. If it's powerful, it just means that the user needs to explicitly grant the permission, like for example, camera. So it will appear a pop-up that the user needs to grant. The other one is policy control. If it's policy control, it means that the permission goes from the top-level document to the iframes that gets included on the page. If it's policy control, there is a default allow list. This default allow list only means like the allow list that will be if there is no delegation. Like for example, for self, the permission will only be allowed on the top level. Most of the permissions are policy control, but not all the powerful permissions are policy control. So as the spec says, not every policy control feature is powerful feature, but also there are some of them that are both of them, like camera. Apart from these two main specs, the one that says if it's powerful, and the other one if it's policy control, for each permission there is an individual specification. For the case of camera and microphone, it's called media capture and streams. In this kind of specification, they declare how, like a feature of the website, the browser, and if it's, for example, powerful, there will be a section that is called permissions integration that will, it will declare the name of the permission. And the other one is if it's policy control, that also has a name for the permission, and if it's policy control, as I mentioned, there will be a default allow list. So at this point, developers only have one scenario for restricting the access to permission, that is permissions policy header. This header is an HTTP response header. Was formerly known as feature policy, but was rebranded in 2021. Also, there was a change on the syntax. And is really basic header. I don't know if you can see here in the example, maybe it's a bit small, but for example, for restricting the access to the camera in all your page, you only need to declare camera equal to an empty parenthesis. So it's more or less basic. Now I have like a couple of examples just to be on the same page. We have the permissions policy header with the camera equal to null, clipboard read only to self restrict the access of clipboard read to the top level document, and the other one is clipboard write that is restricted to self and to iframe.org. In that page there is an iframe with source iframe.org, and there is a delegation of camera, clipboard read, and clipboard write. In this scenario, not the top level and not the iframe will be allowed to get or to request the access to the camera. Only the top level will be allowed to have the clipboard read. And for the case of clipboard write, if there is this delegation, both the website and the iframe. If we change the source of the iframe that is included on the page, like for example, second iframe.org, that this one is not the one that we declare on the permissions policy header, even with the delegation, the clipboard write, that was the last one, the one that was allowed before, in this case, won't be allowed because we restricted the access to clipboard write. So as you can see, it's not like really complex. In the same website with the supported permissions across different browser versions, there is a part of the website in which developers can declare their permissions policy header for their website. And now I will talk about, we are getting into the hacking part. There are some misconceptions on the community. The first one is contrary to delegation versus same origin policy. The picture on the right is like really basic. Let's say that you visit food.bar. If you try to delegate the permission, the camera permission, that you can see that permissions policy header, the camera is restricted to self and iframe.org. If you try to delegate the camera to not iframe.org, not iframe.org won't be allowed to access the camera because it's restricted by the header. But in the case that the permission got delegated to iframe.org, foo.bar loses like this restriction, and iframe.org can delegate the permission to not iframe.org. The second important misconception in the community is the misleading prompt. So if you visit foo.bar and there is a widget, let's say in this example is meet.example.org, if meet.example.org requests the access to the camera and microphone, in the pop-up it will only mention the visited document, in this case foo.bar. This might be important in cases in which the user doesn't know anything about computer, and you can maybe trick the user allowing this or granting this permission. So this one will be important for the rest of the talk. The last one is that there is no reprompt. In the moment that you grant the access of the permission to the website, after that, if some widget is included, it will, and there is also the delegation, it will be allowed to access that permission. So in this scenario, how can we attack this permission model? So in this talk, I will be presenting two kind of cases, and onside this one, there will be two software or popular software in which I found vulnerabilities. The first one is to hack embedded documents that have like relevant delegation. Like for example, camera, microphone, and display capture or screen sharing. So if there is a chat or a widget that gets inserted in a lot of websites, like news or weather, or even in the bank, and has always this delegation, if you try to pawn this really popular widget, you can try, or you will be able to do a second delegation with this permission. As we saw, Some of the misconceptions are really important here, like the one that in the pop-up doesn't appear the top-level document and doesn't appear the iframe and only appears the top-level document. And so this is the first thread model to the browser permission or model. And on this one, there are two popular cases in which I will explain some vulnerabilities that I found. So how can we find this kind of potential candidates for exploiting them? In here, before this research, this was also part of an academic research. And on this paper that was published in an academic conference in ACM IMC 25 this year, we crawled the top 1 million websites. We check from the top 1 million how many use the permission, how many check for permissions, how do they declare the permissions policy header, and I can tell you that only around 10% really declare the permissions policy header, and even for the ones that declare the header, there are a lot of cases with misconfiguration. Like one example is a misplaced comma. So if the header has like a comma in the final, it will break the parsing on the browser, and it will be the same as not declaring the header. There were also other examples that they were declaring like contradictory directives, like self and wildcard. So even that the header is not really complex, developers struggle with the header. And the last part of this research, we found that one category that always delegate like funny or important permission, powerful permissions, are chats. So chats always delegate like camera, microphone, and display capture. So this category was the goal or the software that is really popular and can be used for this hijacking. So customer support widgets or chat widgets are usually the ones that appear with an icon in the corner, and if you click them, there is usually a chat. In this chat, you usually speak with some worker from the company, just asking questions about the products, asking questions about some phone that you bought last week, and so on. So this chat is really, this kind of software is really, really popular. There are also included in bank websites. And for the companies, this is like the right approach for solving questions with the customers, because they can also know some information like the email, the location. And now, from this threat model, that our goal, as I explained before, is to create an iframe inside this iframe to create this second delegation and do the permission hijacking. I found vulnerability in two popular widgets. This is the first one, that is glasses. Glasses is included in 100 websites, and it goes up if we take whole internet to 2,000, and is one of the chat widgets that is out there. So I just tried like testing glasses, so you can interact with the worker. If you send just a message, it's like the one that we see in the one. But usually this chat also support different kind of attachments. And on this second message, there was an attribute that was called type. As an attacker or as a curious person, you just try to change this value. And I end up creating different kind of attachments. Like, apart from images, you could create audio, you could create videos, also PDF. And I end up with one that was creating an iframe on the chat. So if you change this type to the number 8, you will be creating an iframe in both ends in the chat. Like in my end as an attacker and in the end of the worker. So maybe most of you don't know or you haven't heard about local scheme documents are documents that there is no request out, and because of that there is no response. And these kind of documents allow us to create something like a magic spell like that one that allows you to put whatever you want, like HTML with JavaScript, in the source of the iframe. So with this one, you will be allowed to create an HTML inside that iframe. I tried doing that, and it wasn't working because this company was using content security policy. CSP, for those who don't know about CSP, is a header in which developers can declare which resources do they use for their website, like images, styles, and one that they use a lot for restricting like cross-site scripting is a script source. So they have like this gigantic header for the script source, and usually if it's gigantic, you usually have like some endpoints that you can use for bypassing the header. It's not really bypassing CSP, it's like you are using allowed endpoints to run your JavaScript. In this case, there are a lot of tools from the community. I use CSP bypass, that is a really popular tool in the community, and you just need to copy paste this header into the community tool, and it will show you how to bypass this. In this case, there was one endpoint that was allowed, that was reCAPTCHA, and you could load this JavaScript from reCAPTCHA endpoint and then use an event handler that will be used from this JavaScript to execute JavaScript. So at that point, I had cross-site scripting on the other end, on the worker end. I didn't want to spend too much time on this software, so I just assumed that the person who was checking the chat was admin, or at least that had the same permission or the same level of access for editing his company widget. So I just moved to the second part of the attack, that is including our payload in the company's widget. On this second part, usually this kind of chat widget, they have a customizing part on the admin panel in which you can change the color, you can also change the font, the icon, even in which corner the icon appears. And there was one in which you could just use embedded apps inside that widget. So you could like create an iframe inside the iframe. So it was like a functionality inside glasses. So same as before, I saw this and I used again local scheme. In this talk, I will talk a lot about local scheme. So you could also use like local scheme for adding my attacker.org or example.org with the delegation. So at that point, I think there is a recap. At that point, you could send this type 8 message. With that type 8 message, you will have cross-site scripting on the worker side. And if the worker has the access level for modifying the widget, you will be inserting the payload on the widget's company. With this, you will be doing this second delegation of permission, and you will be able to use this second misconception in which in the pop-up it only appears the top level document. So how to do this at scale? You just need to collect all the companies that use classes chat, send them the payload, and just wait for loading like this iframe. This iframe, obviously you can like hide the iframe inside the iframe, and so it doesn't need to be that obvious. I did a small test just of the first part of sending the message and getting a response or a ping in my endpoint. And as you can see, it worked. So I received like a ping from an IP that wasn't from my country. I reported this 14th of May. Then 15th of May, I got the first reply. And 17th of May, there was a fix. So it was like really quickly. The second software in which I found a vulnerability was live chat. Live chat is more common, and I think it's one of the more common chat widgets that is out there. It goes from 38,000 websites to 500,000 if we take like with statistics. So it's really, really common. First, I need to explain a bit of technical information about how live chat works. Live chat includes first a same origin iframe, that is when only appears on the corner. But when you click it, it will create a different an iframe that is from live chat domain, and it's not same origin. And on this one is where the delegation happens. So it creates these two iframes. So I start digging on this one. This one was much harder than the first one. And I start digging on the admin panel, and at some point I found that they were creating an iframe inside the admin panel with the marketplace. Most of these chat widgets, they usually have a marketplace, so developers can develop more plugins for their widgets. So it's a really common. You can install, like, for example, WhatsApp or Telegram on this widget, and they have different functionality. And usually on this marketplace, as usual, there is a comment section. As a researcher or curious person, you usually just try every input that you see on the page. And on this one, I found that they were using Markdown. I was completely surprised. I was not expecting to use Markdown on a comment section. So I checked which software they were using, and the software was called Markdown 2JX, and I found that there were a couple of vulnerabilities some months ago. I also read the README, and there was no mention to security, so that was like a good starting point. So I accepted the challenge of trying to find a vulnerability. The first thing that I found, that is not really because of the library, I think it was more because of how they include this library, it was that using the attribute content editable was making the website to crash. So you could send this message, this input into the comment section, and no one will be able to access that plugin. The second one that I found is meta redirect. So in the moment that someone visits the plugin in which you wrote that, it will get redirected to your site or wherever you put there. The third one was style injection. So you could like change the style on the page. And at that point, with just creating an account, you could make all the pages redirect to another page, like maybe trying phishing with a meta tag. Another one was to make marketplace inaccessible. This one, maybe you can use it because you are developing another plugin and there are some competitors. And the last one was an style injection. In the case of a style injection, you could change like the style, but also it was like a useless. You couldn't use CSS as filtration because there wasn't nothing important on the page. So the last one that I found, I was losing the faith of finding something here, and I found that using the form action from the button, it will execute the JavaScript. So you could use also the one that I found before, the style, and you will be able to create a button in the same place as the button for installing, or you could declare the button invisible all over the screen. And this is like one-click cross-site scripting, and if admin, because usually is admin who will be here, if clicks somewhere in the page, it will execute JavaScript. It will execute JavaScript on this iframe that is a different domain to the admin panel. So maybe it was a completely useless cross-site scripting. But the problem was that the access token that was on the marketplace had the same level access as the one in the admin panel. So instead of having a different access token with different rights on the marketplace, like for example, only for being able to install and uninstall the plugins, it was the same one. So from that point, you could do the cross-site and do whatever you want with that access token. At that point, you can invite yourself as an admin, or the other one that we are trying to do, that is fully automatically, to insert our own code inside the iframe in their company widget to do this second delegation and do the permission hijacking. So now we are moving to this second part. In the case of light chat, also was much harder than glasses, but as you saw, this one is really, really popular. And the same as before, you could change the color, the style of the widget, but all parameters were sanitized. So I was, again, losing my faith of this second part, but all parameters were sanitized except one. And as attacker, we only care about one working. So a bit of recap of light chat. Creating an account, you just need to create an account. You need to comment on this marketplace with the form action. That could be an invisible button all across the page. And if an admin person visits the marketplace and clicks somewhere or in the button that we create, it will have the account takeover, but it will also have this injection. The thing about this injection, it was that it wasn't on the second iframe, the one that was different origin, that was origin from live chat. It was an injection on the first iframe, the one that was executing or was included as a same origin. So you could like do an HTML injection or a cross-site scripting on the top level document. And finding, in this case, maybe not, but the other one was easier than most of the CTF challenges that I've seen in the last year. So I reported this 29th of November. A couple days later, I got the first reply. And 9 days later, there was a fix. So also, this one was also really fast. Now, we move to the second threat model. And instead of attacking embedded apps with delegation, we'll focus on hacking websites that use a permission, but they don't have like a permissions policy header. This might be like an example of one, like video conference websites. Usually in these websites, you might have the permission granted, even that you turn off with a button, but the permission is still granted. So the permission, so if an iframe or the page wants to use the permission, the website will be able to use the permission. And in this example, for example, let's say that there is a CSP, a content security policy, that is very strong and doesn't allow us to do a cross-site scripting, but we found an HTML injection. In that case, we will be able to do, if there is no permissions policy header, we will be able to do this second delegation. And if the permission is not already granted, we will be able maybe to take the permission, because usually we grant the permission to meet.google.com, for example. So the solution for this might be just to do, like, to declare the permissions policy, declaring everything to self, like camera to self, and this will allow like only the top level document to access the permission, and if CSP is mostly correct, we should be fine. This is not really true. There is a way for bypassing this. and is, again, local schemes. So if the permissions policy header is to self, and we create a local scheme, for the case of content security policy, will be inheritance for the local scheme, because the local scheme, as I mentioned, there is no request and there is no response, so there is no header, and should inherit the policies from the father. So if in this local scheme we want to delegate the permission to attacker.com, this shouldn't be allowed. But the thing is, in reality, this is still vulnerable. I found this last year, I reported, and this vulnerability still works in all Chromium-based browser. So you could use this local scheme, this middle local scheme, to do the delegation, because local scheme is not really inheriting the permissions policy from the father. So you could do this trick to delegate the permission to your domain. So thank you. Now I have here 3 words. The first one on the left is the paper. The paper is the one that was published. We did we did the crawl of top 1 million. We check for the permission usage, for which permission usually websites check. Also the permissions policy header, and the last part also about over-permissioned iframes. The one that is in the middle is a blog that I wrote. I think one important part of us as a researcher or developers is to explain to others what we did, and also in this case is maybe more, there are parts that is introductory, but maybe it's much better to read that than the talk. So this is a blog that I wrote. It's short. And the last one, if you want to try out, is a challenge that I designed for CrewCTF 25. This challenge was available for 48 hours and only got 5 solves. If you want to try out, the solution is also online, but I will be tomorrow around. And it's completely related to things that I explained here. So that's all. Thank you all. I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, so any questions, everyone? We have fedora hats to give out. Can someone help me with the microphone? I'm just gonna give you mine.
Hello. As you talked in your presentation, you tested 2 separate chat, let's say, engines or services. Did you test any other ones or any other that are really common?
Thank you for the question. So there are a lot of them, a lot of chat widgets. It's impossible to test them all. I just choose a couple of them, so my goal was just to find one popular, like live chat, but the first one that I found was classes. So it's impossible to test them all. I just found vulnerabilities in these 2, so I didn't test all of them. Maybe you can try and you will find similar stuff in the rest. Any other
questions? I got that one.
So it seems that you know a lot about content security policy, and actually last year I was tasked with doing that on our application, and I had to deal with the nonce, the scripts, the styles, the iframe, the sources, I don't know if anything else, and I would like to ask you if I have to maybe keep anything special in mind, or is there anything better than a content security policy that you can do?
So, in the case of permission policy, it's much simple, but for the case of CSP, it's really hard, even for small companies, to declare like the proper CSP. I will say that usually they use it like a way of restricting cross-site scripting. So mostly you care about a script source. I know that it's hard to declare like with the nonce. There is also a style, there is also image. So there are a lot of them and it's really hard to declare it. Maybe if you do some months later, if you change something on the backend, you need also to update the CSP. So right now it's like not only your problem, it's like a problem in the community. So I don't have like the perfect answer. It's just what fits for your company or your website, and that's it. So I don't have like a proper answer for this one.
Hi, so I really love the talk. I was wondering if you had more context about the CSP exploit that involved reCAPTCHA. I found that really interesting and I've never heard about it. So I was curious how did you learn about it?
One second. Where it was? Here. Okay, this one. So, okay, it's not working. Nice. So the bypass that I use is not really a bypass of CSP, but in CSP, like for example in the script source, if you declare like a lot of allowed endpoints, like you allow all the reCAPTCHA path, you are allowing, nice, thanks, you are like allowing every script that is inside that path. At that point, you are inserting that JavaScript. And maybe that JavaScript, like, I think there are other JavaScript, like, I don't know if it's React, in which they are executing and they will take this HTML attribute that is not really a thing in HTML, so it's not like a proper event.
Yeah, I think that's Angular. So, yeah, it's an Angular framework thing. I didn't mean specifically that it was a CSP bypass. I know that it's not, but I was wondering more so how known of a thing this is, and just in general how you found out about it.
So you mean how popular is to use these kind of tools?
How popular is it to find these kinds of bypasses?
Okay. So this one is really related with this question and is really hard for companies declaring like a proper CSP. So usually when a developer see an error, also me as a developer, when you find an error, you just want the thing to work. You are not like worried in security or privacy because most of the stuff that you see, maybe you don't probably know how it works in the back. So these kind of bypasses, I think they are really, really common, and that's why it's still a thing to restrict cross-site scripting in the web. And I think cross-site scripting started in 2008 or 2010, and we are still discussing about cross-site scripting. So I will say that it's really popular, but I don't have any kind of statistics to tell you.
Thank you.
How huge damage could be?
So for the case of live chat, you will be able, like there are some tricky parts, like for example the admin has to like go to the marketplace part and click somewhere, but at that point the iframe will get included on the iframe, and it really depends because there are some variables. The one is the admin clicking, and the other one is the user granting the permission. But the thing is that most of the people that use that kind of website doesn't know anything about computer. So if the bank asks for your camera, you will allow the camera. If you think like in your mom, maybe your mom just want to see his bank account, and will grant the permission just to continue like in the page. So there is like not a specific value that I can tell you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so amazing presentation. Have you tried this stuff on any other widgets or just the message widget? And if so, what interesting things have you found in them?
What do you mean?
Like you said, you presented the message widgets that you try to exploit them. And I'm wondering if you've tried to exploit any other widgets in browsers.
So I think it's very similar to the one that he did, no? More in general. Other categories, for example.
Yeah.
So on the paper, we saw that the ones that really delegate, let's say, the permissions that we like camera or powerful permission, is only chat widgets usually. There are also others that are usability widgets, like the one for blind people, for example. But the only one that is really popular, that always delegate the permission, even that the permission won't be used, is chat widgets. So I didn't look at the rest of them.
Thank you.
Thank you.